Afternoon. I started working before I even realized what work was. Around the age of 12, 13, I found myself working as a PR. For anyone that would listen, I would kind of harp on about how great my older siblings were and what they were up to. And any kind of conversation that was had around me, I was somehow related to how fabulous my sister was or how my brother was doing that amazing thing, and it was better than the conversation we was having at the time. And what that made me realize is talking is great. Anyone remember that BT advert, "It's good to talk" kind of campaign? It really is. But when you're talking on its own, it doesn't really hold much weight. And I had an epiphany in my teenage years when I realized that I was doing a lot of talking without much to back it up. So I thought I needed to do something about that. At the age of 14, I decided that I wanted to change things about me. One of the first things I changed was my name. So I was just about to start my GCSEs, and I read the autobiography of Malcolm X during the summer break. So I came back a bit passionate, you could say. So I decided that I was going to stop using the quintessential English name that I'd been using since primary school, and I was going to use my Nigerian name. So I went back to school and I said said to my form teacher that I wanted to be known as Tokunbo Ajasa-Oluwa. That's my full name. That's who I am at home. That's who I want to be at school. And he looked at me like, "Are you sure, son? Do you know what you're letting yourself in for?" I went to a boys' school in East London, not too far from here at all. And basically, the currency was either how well you could fight, or how well you looked like you could fight, or how well you could cuss. So there were the two kind of currencies that worked in our school for survival. So basically, I decided to change my name, and initially, obviously, I got ribbed quite a lot, not just by students, but teachers as well. But once that got a bit boring and subsided, I realized that I was getting a bit of respect. And I think that respect came from the bravery of taking such a bold move. And I think it helped me realize that it's actually okay to be different. And I think that's what I wanted to be able to share with you guys today, that there's 3 key lessons that I've personally experienced that I try and instill within the young people that I work with. And the first one is the fact that it's okay to be different. I work in a digital space, and in today's climate, the aspect of being able to get information and insight happens at fantastic speed. I mean, nowadays it's so easy to be able to directly communicate with someone that you admire, or someone that you have an issue with, or someone that you have always been influenced by. Well, that's the kind of environment we're working in. And when you're a young person, potentially impressionable young person, it's very easy to be overwhelmed and fascinated by someone's digital persona. And I think it's really important for us to support young people to understand that there can be a gulf of difference between one's digital persona and their real persona. So for me, what I've done throughout my years of working with young people is always ask them about what is the ingredients, what are the key qualities around that individual that they find so inspiring, and try and make them focus on the qualities rather than the individual themselves. So moving on to my second kind of experience. So the first one was school, and then it was about being confident enough to be me. And the second one happened when I was around 19. And the life lesson here was being able to use what you're passionate about as a tool and a vehicle to learn new skills. So at 19, I was a huge hip-hop culture fan. I mean, literally woke up reciting lyrics, and that's how much I was into the culture. A friend of mine, a very good close friend of mine, spent a summer in New York, and he was fortunate enough to find himself on the video music set of a Jay-Z music video. I think the track was called "Can't Knock the Hustle" featuring Mary J. Blige, and he came back to London, and he was ranting and raving about how I need to be in New York, I needed to experience New York in the summer, we need to be there, we're wasting our time in London, blah, blah, blah. So a wild idea became a reality, and that's when Raptors was born. Raptors was a concept that me and my friend had come up together, and it was basically a documentary idea where we were going to shoot a kind of documentary that lifted the lid on the thriving hip-hop culture of that time. So we borrowed a camera, packed a tripod, and with 2 battered student BBC passes, we made our way to New York. It was a phenomenal trip. It was probably the best 8 weeks of my life, because what it allowed us to do through sheer perseverance and the art of blagging, it got us to meet some of those guys that we kind of put on a pedestal of influential figures. And it was amazing. It was like we got the chance to be able to interview someone like Jay-Z's right-hand man at the time, a guy named Damon Dash. And this was when Jay-Z's label, Rockefeller, was a startup. So in their reception, they literally had 1 leather sofa, and that was it. It's quite funny when I think about it now. So that's literally where they were. It was a startup record label, and Jay-Z was just establishing himself. And then we got to be able to film the likes of Lauryn Hill and the Fugees in their prime at the Brooklyn Carnival. And we got the chance to hang out with the likes of Nas on a music video shoot for a track called Firm Biz, which was produced by a renowned hip-hop director, a guy named Hype Williams at the time, and it was featured an artist named Foxy Brown. And all those things together really made me think about my passion and how I was using my passion to learn new skills. And the beauty of it is that, yes, a summer holiday turned into a working one, but those 8 weeks basically provided a fantastic foundation around my work ethic. And what I realized that enables me to excel is about finding things that I'm passionate about. So that's the second kind of life lesson that I try and instill within the young people I work with today. You see, for me, I'm quite fortunate that I work with young people all day, every day. I run an organization called Go Think Big. And what we do basically is support young people to be the best they can be. We support young people with the skills, confidence, the opportunities, and the experience to help themselves on that first step of their career ladder. And that's what we do. And before that organization, I run my own organization that inspired a generation of young journalists that didn't come from a background where their aunt worked for The Economist or their uncle worked for the Daily Mail. So I've kind of been in this game for a number of years of working with young people and inspiring them to be everything they can be. So for me, it's part of my culture, it's part of my fabric, it's part of my being. So the third experience I'd like to share really was right after graduating in university, where myself and 3 friends decided to go to Portugal just to celebrate that kind of ending that chapter of our lives. So we went to STA, Student Travel Agency, and then we saw this poster. And this poster said around the world ticket for, I don't know, maybe 1,200 quid or something. And then we looked at each other and we exited the student travel agency, went to the McDonald's around the corner, and each of us literally scribbled down all the places in the world that we wanted to go to. The 8 most popular places became the itinerary for our world trip. So we went back to the place and we put the kind of scribbled piece of paper on the desk and said, that's where we want to go, make it happen. Following that, it was like the 1st of November, year 2000, we arrived in Rio de Janeiro. And I remember being an emotional wreck, actually, when we arrived down. One, because I had loads of layers of clothes on, which I don't know what I was thinking. So I was sweltering and very emotional at the same time. But the reason I was so emotional is because I remember those days in school, in Leighton, and daydreaming about going to places as mesmerizing as Brazil. And then realizing, coming back to reality and saying, individuals like myself from my background didn't get to experience places like that, because that's the kind of environment I was in. So for me to be able to make that happen, I realized it was a really pioneering moment in my personal journey, and for us as a collective of friends, it was something that was quite groundbreaking. So that trip was amazing. But what it taught me was that notion of embracing the fear of doing things that you didn't think you could do before. And I actually remember when we left the travel agent, I went back home and I typed the 8 cities that we were going to go to on an A4 piece of paper, big capital letters. And then I printed out around 12 times and put it all over my house, because I needed that constant reminder of the discipline I needed in order to make such an audacious idea a reality. So we made that happen, and we spent 9 months on the road, and it was fantastic. I mean, from one minute we're in Botafogo, the next we're in LA, and then from there it was Tokyo, and then next thing I know, I'm doing Kung Fu in Hong Kong. It was just nuts. It was an absolutely surreal experience. And as 4 black guys from London, it's no surprise that we did face prejudice and a bit of racism. In fact, wherever we went, we had to either be a sports team or a music band. There was no other options. The whole idea of 4 black boys from London traveling around just because we can and we wanted to was ridiculous. It was actually totally preposterous. It just doesn't happen. So we knew that either at that point of landing in Rio or at later stages in our lives, we realized that our whole mentality about being boundless and being restricted by other people's perceptions had changed. In a sense, it kind of opened Pandora's box for me, because now I'm in that position of, I just can't hear no, and that's a problem for my bosses and my staff. But I mean, that trip was amazing, because it really helped 4 black boys from East End of London to grow up and realize how big the world is. And now when I work with young people that haven't been out of their borough or haven't been out of their zone or haven't been out of their ends or whatever, it just, for me, I sometimes just share things with them about being in a fisherman's boat in Dominica and the guy having, the captain having 3 fingers missing and you know, driving our boat to Antigua, and me using a watermelon as my pillow and just doing heavy prayer, heavy prayer, because this guy had 4 fingers missing, 2 on each hand, and he's along. And I was just telling him that kind of experience you don't have in London. That kind of experience you won't have in Hackney or Leighton or wherever you're from. So it was just trying to instill a mentality that you can be everything you want to be. And I think for all of us here that are either young people or work with young people, it's these kind of qualities that we need to be instilling in our youth today, to allow them to embrace the notion of being magnificent, allow them to embrace the idea of being boundless. And so for me, coming back to reality, all of those experiences in my teens and my early 20s have inspired me to kind of dedicate my life to enabling and nurturing young talent. Before I was doing the job I'm doing today, I set up a youth program around 12 years ago, co-set up a youth program around 12 years ago in South London. And that was really looking at the perception of young black boys, which was extremely negative. And even today, of the young people that are unemployed, you'll find over 50% of young black men are unemployed compared to 20% or 22% of their white counterparts. So there's still an issue. And what I found with Origin is that it was about, we created it as a voluntary package, as grown black men that wanted to help families to raise sons. And that's something that, although I'm no longer involved in the same capacity, is something that's still running today. And that's just about the investment, as some of the other speakers have talked about, the investment of giving back and seeing the rewards of lives you can change. So one of the speakers talked about one of these young people costing the system over £1 million. I can only imagine how much money the likes of Origin program and other things have saved the system. So on that note, thank you for listening.
Thank you.